That is Quebec's Premier François Legault making some announcements about various restrictions and zones in the province. You can see there that zones outside of Montreal will move into the orange level, while Montreal will remain in the more stricter red zone. Interestingly, the Premier talking also about delaying the second dose of the vaccine, saying that they will extend it to 4 months. Quebec has always been doing 3 months. That's a big decision that a number of provinces are making right now in the way that they vaccinate their citizens. As I mentioned, they're delaying that second dose by 4 months. The 3 COVID-19 vaccines with 2 doses that are approved right now for use in Canada: Moderna, Pfizer-BioNTech, and the Oxford-AstraZeneca vaccine. Canada's National Advisory Committee on Immunization initially said that you should get your second shot within 6 weeks of the first. That has changed. Just moments ago, NACI, as it's known, issued an alert that they are changing the recommendation to go alongside what you heard from Quebec just now, what BC initially announced a few days ago, and many other provinces have followed suit. What does it mean for you? How much faster might you, for example, get that first dose? Let's bring in Dr. David Naylor. He's the co-chair of Canada's Immunity Task Force, and he's with us from Toronto. Hi, Dr. Naylor. Pleasure to have you back on the program. Thanks for making the time.
Glad to be here, Vashi. Thank you.
Let me start on this idea of delaying the second dose of 2-dose vaccines by 4 months. We are expecting the Advisory Committee on Immunization to issue a recommendation to that effect, following on the heels of the decision from BC, which kind of set off a whole number of provinces following suit with what they had decided. Your thoughts on that delay? Is the evidence there to support it?
I'd say the evidence is there for the concept of further delay, Vashi. If you look at the real-world data coming out of the UK, where they've had a number of weeks to head towards a 12-week separation of the 2 doses, the data are very encouraging. We have trial data from earlier showing that going out to 90 days, a single dose of the AstraZeneca vaccine is effective. So things are triangulating. No one's really gone out the full 4 month period. It's too early in the history of these vaccines for real world data to have emerged. So I'd say the concept is completely defensible, but we're going to have to be very careful to monitor the data throughout the entirety of this waiting period and make sure that we're not seeing a lot of breakthroughs and problems. Is it feasible with careful monitoring? Yes, it is, but monitoring must be done fastidiously. And the last thing I'd say is we have to be particularly careful looking at some of those who have immune compromise or the frail elderly to make sure that we don't put them in jeopardy. Why do we do this? We do it because we can cover more people with a single dose of the vaccine, spread the protection, prevent more severe disease, and prevent fatalities. And the evidence is clear that that's what you can do if you spread those doses out widely. But we have to do it safely and watch carefully. So
here's my question, just based on what you said. And I listened also to someone from Manitoba, Dr. Reimer, who there is in charge of the vaccines there, who said they're following suit too with BC, but they talked about how, we know how long the vaccines have been out there. So the real-time data that we have shows that that immunity does last, as you point out, for a few months at least. But that I'm just curious, how did we all of a sudden all arrive at this 4-month figure?
That is mysterious to me until I read what NACI's thought processes were, Vashi. When I look at the data, I see triangulation that's pretty good to 3 months. And you can certainly infer or extrapolate to say we should be fine out to 16 weeks. But I think the data need to be watched carefully, as I said. Here's one place where we may benefit from being laggards in vaccine rollout, and that is that by the time we get out a few more weeks, the British experiment will be pretty conclusive about 12 weeks, right. And that may give us more comfort about going the extra 4. But it all bears very close watching. That's all I can say.
Is this from your perspective?
Right concept, but watching is important.
Gotcha. Is this from your perspective driven by supply?
Only partly, I think, Vashi. The Brits had a lot of vaccine on board, and they chose to go with the 12-week extension of dosing for both Pfizer and the AstraZeneca vaccine. And I think that reflects the basic principle here that you can't think about this like a lab experiment where it has to be precisely replicated. It's not a clinical setting where it's about the patient in front of you. The patient here is the population. It's a utilitarian approach that says greatest good for the greatest number. And if you want to stop the epidemic, you have to follow your normal measures of control, but you also have to add these vaccines and get them into more arms. The more arms, the better. So I think the British imperative was to follow that principle as much as manage shortfalls in supply. In our case, I think it's a little bit of both in play here. But as you get into that second quarter, we've got lots of vaccines. So it all has to be watched and reconsidered on the fly. It's just important to try to get those jabs into arms right now, especially with the third threatening.
Gotcha. Let me switch gears slightly to AstraZeneca, because there's also some recommendations about that I was hoping you could help us understand and help our audience understand. NACI is saying not for those at this point because of a lack of data over 65. We heard Nova Scotia yesterday weigh out not even taking AstraZeneca. What is your message to Canadians who will see their turn for a vaccine come up and it happens to be AstraZeneca?
I would take the vaccine myself quite happily, Vashi. It shows extraordinary effectiveness, competitive with the mRNA vaccines for the endpoints of severe disease and death. We know as well that it's a vaccine that is pretty durable. We've got good data out to 90 days for the younger population. We will, in the next 2 to 3 weeks, I hope, have data from the US, which will clarify the uncertainty about older individuals. And if that rolls in, then I think we'll be in a good position to make wide use of this vaccine. I have to emphasize, no place in the world has put a label on it that restricts the age, but many jurisdictions have done what we've done, where the regulator has said 18 and over, and then guideline panels, or in the case of the EU, local regulators have been more conservative. Switzerland, for example, has still not approved this vaccine at all, insisting that they want to see the US data. So it's a moving front. There's nothing unusual about what's happened here. I think people are being prudent. There may be disagreements between jurisdictions, as happened in Europe, and I hope it will all be settled out in a couple of weeks when the US data come in, and we'll be able to make great use of this vaccine. It's a workhorse. It can stay in the fridge for weeks, easy to handle, and very inexpensive. Let's hope all the data come out and we're able to make full use of this vaccine.
And just before I let you go, I have less than a minute, but I was wondering, we've got a whole bunch of different news. AstraZeneca coming, for example, approved and coming. Pfizer can now be stored differently, not in those, just as of today, Health Canada issued basically permission. And then also some more vaccines than we expected are coming in. Do you think the possibility of an accelerated timeline is there? And again, especially posited against the potential for a third wave? Are you more optimistic, let's say, than you were a few weeks ago?
Yeah, I'm more optimistic because I think we've got better evidence to spread the doses. Still not exactly where we'd all like it to be, but it's getting better all the time. That means we can cover more people. As we cover more people, and as long as we keep some of the other measures up prudently, I think that we can start to reduce our chances of a nasty third wave. And then as we roll those vaccines out more widely, Vashi, we have a better chance of a happy Canada Day. I don't think we can let our guard down. I don't think there's any guarantees, but we're headed into a better direction right now in terms of vaccine rollout, and cautious optimism is warranted. We will beat this thing eventually.
Well, I like ending it on that note. Thanks, Dr. Naylor. Appreciate it very much.
My pleasure. As always.
That's Dr. David Naylor. He's the co-chair of the Federal Immunity Task Force. Hi, I'm Vashi Capellos, host of Power in Politics. See more of our show by subscribing to the CBC News channel or click the link for another video.